Wow, it's time for another show full of tips and ideas from the sales growth leadership expert, Dean Akers. Known for his experience in hyper-growing companies and creating cultures for high-performance teams, here's Dean.
Well, welcome to your Sales and Leadership Ninja Show. I'm your head ninja, Dean Akers, and every week I bring you a rant to stimulate your thinking in either the realm of sales and or leadership. Today's show is part of a series that I'm doing on selling with intent. This has been a program I've done for actually close to 40 years, actually my whole life, closer to almost 50 years, that has always worked, operative word always. So today is the third step in the Selling with Intent show series that I've done. So I've been hyper-growing company sales and profits for years, and I continue to help others achieve these same kinds of results with the stuff I'm sharing with you today. In past shows, we've touched on all these techniques in some form or fashion. This is the third in a series of the whole Selling with Intent process. It's a very, very fundamental strategy, selling with intent. Again, over the last couple weeks, I've shared the first step and the second step. If you have not watched those shows, I really highly recommend you going back and watching the first and second step of Selling with Intent. It's going to make a difference in each step. So a quick review. The first step that we did was identification of the perfect customer. Again, if you're already in business, the easy way to do that is you take your top group. It could be 10 or 20 clients. You look at that segment and you kind of get their DNA. And I'll have companies say, well, we have all kinds of customers. Well, when we really deep dive the DNA, we usually find there's definitely a pattern. So you want to deep dive and get that DNA. That's the first step. Then you're going to go and build out this CV list, or this list of all these potential clients. And this is where you take the DNA of your existing client and you match it to other clients that would be similar. For instance, let's just use a hypothetical. You're selling to law firms, and your biggest law firm has 10 lawyers. So then you sit there and go, with the 10 lawyers I did, call it 10 grand. And so it was $1,000 a lawyer. So I do $10,000 with a 10 lawyer group. Wow, here's a law group that has 20 lawyers. Then the assumption you would use there when you're doing your DNA would be they're worth $20,000 to you because you have 20 lawyers. Somebody that has 500 lawyers is worth $500,000 to you. So now you start building that list of potential clients. Again, with Selling with Intent, the whole premise of it's not if I'm going to get a client, it's when I'm going to get a client. So now you've taken and you've done the DNA. You've now built out a list of all the people that mirror that DNA. And now you built in that relationship, in that list of relationship indexes we've shared in the last show of 3 deep. And if you don't know them at all, it's 3 ones. If they're attending your holiday party at your house, they're probably 10s. So now we're going to talk about the third step. You've identified these people that you haven't done business with. You're not doing business with them. And now it's about building relationships. And in the third step, I do a couple key things in the B2B realm. One is I do cold calls, absolute cold calls. And the reason I do absolute cold calls is they tend to shock people. Again, people are always interested in saying, well, I've got to make sure they know what I sell. No, you don't. You know that they buy what you sell. That is the difference in Selling with Intent, is that you do know they buy what you sell. You don't need to go sell them. You know they can buy what you sell. So the key is building the relationships, and that's the third step. And I start out with an absolute cold call. Number one, you've done your research. Now you should reach out to meet the customer. And again, remember, your ultimate goal in intent selling is to, at this juncture, build a relationship. I'll have people always tell me, well, I got to make a presentation. I've got a great presentation to tell them what I do and what our company can do for them. And my answer is no, hell no. You've done the first step of identifying them, so you already understand they use your products. You've quantified them, so you can even almost get real close to what they use of your product. So again, in intent selling, you're working on the premise of not if you're going to get the client, but when you're going to get the client. So to go in and puke all over them about your product on the very first cold call is an absolute waste of time. And oh, by the way, I always, and if anybody wants one, you can reach out to me at dean@deanakers.com. But I always have my puke protectors I give my ninjas. And all this is a poncho, and this helps them remind themselves about the fallacy in making presentations. So step 3 is what we're talking about today. And this is the step where you go in to get thrown out. And I've actually had salespeople where we make the goal of seeing how many times you can get thrown out in a day. And when I mean thrown out, I never get physically thrown out, although I've had guards walk me out and stuff. But I generally find if I'm very friendly and not trying to sell, people are opening to listening to me. And also, again, you're not going to sell on that first call. And you're not, if you think you are and you go, well, I close them first, I'm a first call closer, I want to meet you. Reach out to me, I want to meet you. Because if you are, I want to see how successful you are in your market share. And generally I find that 99% of the people that think they're good at that really suck. And they're not successful. So now we're at the third step. We've already identified the DNA. We know the potential customers. And so now we're going cold calling. And with step 3, it's about building relationships. And by the way, when I cold call, what's interesting is, and I'll go with salespeople over the years and we'll go cold call and they'll go, oh, I'm here to meet so-and-so, a decision maker. And the receptionist goes, well, he's not available. Oh, can I leave him a note, or can you tell him I stopped by? And they go, yeah. And we walk out and I go, tell me about the receptionist. And they go, what do you mean? Well, you just went in. It's not a matter of if we're going to get a client, it's when we're going to get a client. You didn't even build any relationship with the receptionist. And they look at me and they go, well, why would I build a relationship with her? She's not a decision maker. I go, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And so the next calls, I'll go in and I'll start asking stuff about the gatekeeper. I'll introduce myself. I'm friendly to them. And one of the things I always ask is, how long have you been with the company? If they've been there longer than 6 months, and if they've been in that position for longer than 6 months, you can go to bed knowing they know everything. They actually may be the most important person for you to know. And I'll tell you a funny story. So I had a big potential client that I needed in a business that I just had gotten into, and everybody was telling me how competitive it was. So I go call on this potential client. I go in, and the receptionist, I introduce myself, I meet her full name, and I just start talking to her, and she goes, can I help you after that? And I go, I'm here to introduce myself. I do this kind of work. And she goes, well, we don't have anything to do with that. Our company, we just do this. You don't have any reason to call on us. And I go, really? So I got her full name. I wrote her a handwritten note when I got in my car. And a week later, and I found out in this case, I found out about 3 things about her in that initial, call it 2 minutes. And I found out her son was playing Little League and blah, blah, blah. And so the next week I cold called him again. I knew the size of this potential customer because they mirrored the DNA. I knew it wasn't a matter of if, it was only a matter of when. So I went back in to see her, and she looked at me almost like, who are you? But she kind of remembered me. But she had gotten my note, and I go, I'm Dean Akers. She goes, oh, I got your note. That was so kind. And she goes, well, I told you we don't do anything here. And I said, well, I didn't come in to try to sell you today. I just wanted to come in and see how your son's Little League game was. She opened up. She said, "Oh, it was awesome, blah, 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 blah. We won." And it went on and on and on. Move the clock forward, we built this relationship. She and I built a relationship. I wrote her notes, I sent her my cards, the things I always talk about in all my shows. One day she calls me and she goes, "What are you doing on Wednesday night?" And I go, "What do you need me to do?" And she goes, "I need you to show up at this little bar about 6 o'clock. You walk in and our executives are all going to be there." It was a little hole in the wall bar in Tampa. And I mean, a real hole in the wall bar. Nobody would ever go there hardly. She goes, "Just show up there like you're just coming in to get your own beer." And I'll go, "Dean." And you'll go, "Whoa." And then I'll introduce you. Sure enough, I show up there. She goes, "Dean." And she comes over and she goes, "Oh, come over here." And I go up and I start meeting everybody. Long story short, we just started talking about mundane stuff. I met the CEO, all the partners, everybody there that night. And they had, and it was funny because two of my competitors were there. And it was really comical because it was a real tight-knit company that you could never get into, and the competitors had it just locked down. And they knew me, by the way, and you should have seen their face when I showed up. You should have seen their face when she was introducing me to everybody. Long story short, I built a relationship within that organization, and they ultimately became my largest customer. They took me in deals all the time. They would take me in and they would say, "You need to do business with Dean." And when I mean my largest customer, they were a conduit type company, but they were who you had to go through, and they controlled a lot of stuff. So long story short, I knew who they were. I made a relationship with the receptionist. She had been there more than 6 months, knew everything, actually been there for years. She brought me in. She introduced me. She built my credibility. She made sure I got business. She made sure I got last looks. And as I built my relationships within the organization, I literally got all the business, and they became my largest customer. Another funny story about cold calling is I had a person tell me one day, I need you to go on a meeting with me. And I go, "Okay." And she goes, "We're going to go meet the CEO of this company, and they're in another state in another city." I go, "Okay." And so we get on the airplane early that morning. It was going to be a round trip, 1 day deal. And on the airplane, halfway to the city, I said, "So what time's our appointment?" And she looks at me and she goes, "Well, we don't have an appointment, Mr. Cold Caller." And I go, "Oh, okay." And so we're going to see him without an appointment. No big deal. So we went and cold called, literally flew to another city about an hour and a half away from Tampa Bay. So we walk into the big building this CEO was in, and it was a big potential customer, so it met all the criteria. We knew the DNA. And this was comical of how to get in on a cold call. The building had guards, started yucking it up with them, and one thing led to another, and the guards finally said, "Where do you need to go?" I told them. They gave me badges, I signed in, gave my business card, didn't really put me through the grill. We go to get on the elevator, and this is comical. So the person I'm with goes to hit the button for the floor. I'm going to say floor 12. I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, don't hit the button. Back on in the elevator." So we backed in. This is a big building. It's in the morning. The elevator starts piling people in. People are pushing numbers. And then one gentleman gets on and pushes the exact floor we're going to call it floor 12. Well, by the time we got to floor 12, I reached over and said, "Could somebody push?" "Oh, floor 12. And he goes, "Oh, I already pushed it." And I go, "Oh, thank you." And I start just conversing with this gentleman. By the time we reached floor 12, I knew he had kids, played Little League, just all this stuff. We got off the elevator. The guy asked me why you're here, and I said, "I came here to meet the CEO." He was general counsel for the whole corporation. He said, "Well, I'll take you there." He takes us down this I call it maze of halls, swipes his magnet card, and we walk straight into the C-suite of this large company. And then he walks us into the CEO's office and says, "This is so-and-so and so-and-so from Tampa, Florida. They came up to meet you, and I want to introduce you to them." And we ended up yucking it up and whatever. Cold calling absolutely works. And it is crazy, especially when you go there not to try to make a sale because you know, they can buy, and you use the thing if it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Now, one of the fallacies of cold calling is a lot of people cold call, but they never follow up. I always send a note right after my cold call to the receptionist, everybody I met, and then they get in my loop of unique touches, which we're going to talk about in our next session. So, the third step is building relationships, and it starts with this cold calling, getting thrown out, because you know it's not if they're going to buy, it's when they're going to buy. So selling with intent is awesomely fun. Again, as you go through the process, it's not a matter of if they're going to buy, it's a matter of when they're going to buy. And I promise you, the process always works. It's been my personal secret and the secret for my ninjas and all my teams that have been super successful financially and in sales over the last 45 years. It never fails and always achieves hyper sales results. So let's all go out and let's work on selling with intent. Again, thanks for tuning in every week. And remember, if this helps you. Tell your friends about it. I love every week sharing this journey with you. And I get emails and stuff sent to me at dean@deanakers.com asking for questions, asking for additional information. I've got sales management people that are asking me to kind of give them some tips, and I'm always here for you. And again, that's dean@deanakers.com. And you can always get my book, Self-Talk, Think Like a Child. And I have my third book coming out probably in the next 6 months, which is going to be Selling with Intent, and all the processes, so you'll have that. So this week, let's go out and get thrown out. Let's go make some cold calls. Let's go take that CV list that you've done where you know it's not a matter of if they're going to buy, it's when. Go get thrown out and call on those big potential clients. I promise you, it'll be successful. Have a great week.
We hope you enjoyed this week's show. Subscribe today to our podcast and send questions or thoughts to help@deanakers.com. Also, visit us at www.deanakers.com to listen to prior shows and view helpful videos. Also, great tips to download. Thanks again. See you next week.